Hi, and thank you for joining me today for another lesson of Unity from scratch. This is part 2 of the Parallax Effect series, where we explore the different ways to achieve a parallax effect in a 2D game. Today we'll see how to create a parallax effect without using any scripts. So without further ado, let's begin. So the first thing that we'll do is go over the scene. As you can see, it's the same scene from part 1 of the tutorial. We have no animations at the moment. We have only this sample scene, and in the sprites folder we have the same backgrounds that we had in the part 1 and the wizard character that we had in part 1. We have no game objects, and we'll create them now one by one. So the first thing that we'll do is just bring the ground, and we'll create a box collider 2D and fit the box collider to the sprite. This is very easy, but let's just do it exactly. Great. Now we'll add the wizard. Again, it's very small, like in part 1, so we'll increase its size and put it here. Great. We'll add box collider to that too, and fit it. And we'll add a rigid body. I will not go into what exactly we're doing with the box collider and rigid body because it's out of the scope of this tutorial, but let's just test for a minute and see that nothing weird happens. Great, the wizard is standing on the ground. Now let's add a little animation. We'll change the name here to wizard and drag these two sprites here. It will ask us to create an animation. We already have an animations folder, and we'll call it wizard running. And let's test again. Yep, the wizard is running. Great. The next thing that we want to do is add movement to the wizard. So when we hit the left and right buttons, it will move left and right. Since again, going over the controller is out of the scope of this tutorial, I'll just do it quickly. So we'll go into Google and search for Brachy's 2D controller. And Brachy's actually has a pretty decent 2D controller on GitHub. So we'll just steal it. Yeah. Great. Just copy it. And quickly, let's create a new C# script. We'll call it character controller 2D. I think that's the name of the class of Brachy's. And open it. And let's just replace everything. Character controller 2D, I think that's the name of the class. Let's just make sure, save it. Great. Now let's add it to the wizard. And it's missing some game objects, so we'll quickly create them. In order to know where the character is in the world, the character controller needs a ground check object, a ceiling check object, and a crouch disable object, which is optional if I'm not mistaken. So let's create them quickly. Let's create an empty, let's call it ground check, and another one, we'll call it ceiling check, and the ground check we'll put here, and the ceiling check we'll put here, and the ground check needs to be on the ground, and the ceiling check needs to be on the head. And these game objects actually let the script know if the character is standing on the ground or hit something that it cannot go under. It's not very important to our tutorial, but we'll do it anyway. So the next thing we need to do is create a script that will tell the character controller to move left or right, depending on what we hit on the keyboard. So let's create another script. We'll call it wizard controller. And let's open it. Great. So the first thing that we need is speed. So let's make it easier. So let's put everything public. And let's make it 20. And we'll need Brachy's character controller. Yeah. And we'll need, that's it actually. We won't change the animation, so let's keep it simple. Let's keep it simple. Okay. Get component 2D. Okay, so on the start method, we'll get the character controller 2D, so we can use it later. And in the update, we'll need to understand if we're moving. So let's do input. Get access raw. And we want to know if we're moving on the horizontal plane and we'll multiply it by speed. Right. And we need actually to save it so we can later move the character itself. So let's create a float and we'll call it hor move. Okay, great. And we'll do the actual movement in the fixed update. And we'll just tell the character controller to move, and time fixed delta time, and these parameters actually tell the movement controller if the character is crouching, if I'm not mistaken. Let's see if it's crouching and if it's jumping. So we are not crouching and we're not jumping, we're not doing anything like that. So this is a very simple movement script. So let's go back to Unity and see if it's working. One thing that we need to do is I forgot to do is add the ground to the 2D controller. The 2D controller needs to know what layer consists of the ground. So let's add a layer and call it ground, and tell it that this ground sprite is the ground. So let's add it to the ground and tell it that the ground layer is the ground. Last thing, let's add the wizard controller. Great. And let's see if it's working. Yep. I'm hitting left and right. And the wizard is going left and right. That's crazy. Yeah. Okay. So we're ready to start creating our parallax effect. This parallax effect, as I said earlier, has no script. It doesn't need any script. It actually mimics what we see in the real world around us. It means that the furthermost objects are really big, really far away, and the nearest objects are smaller and really near to us. So we'll start with the background. The furthermost background is this. We'll put it here and we'll send it really far away. We'll send it to something like 40. And then we'll go into the next one, which is the clouds. We'll put it here. And this one we'll put it on 10. Now it doesn't look like much now, but bear with me. Next one is the mountains. The mountains, we can probably, they're much closer, so we can put them on 6. And the trees are actually, the trees are near to us, so they can stay where they are. We'll just use the sorting to put the wizard in front of the trees. That's it. And we have the ground, which is on the same z value as the trees, which is 0. If we'll stop here for a moment, we'll be able to hit the 2D button and go into 3D and have a look in how our scene is set up. So we can see that the stars are really far away, then the clouds, and then the mountains, and then the trees in the ground. Now, it's not enough, as we know in real life, the stars and the sky are huge. So let's increase them. Let's also create a background object. Where is it? Oh, sorry. And move all the layers here. so it will be easier to maintain. Also, let's put them in the right order. Great, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And so number 5 is the stars. Let's enlarge it. I'm holding the Shift key to keep the aspect ratio. And so this is huge. Next is the clouds. They're also big, but not as big as the sky. We can actually center everything. Okay. And last, the mountains are big, but they are not as big as the clouds. Let's move them up a little. Okay, so let's go again to 3D. And we can see it looks fine. So the next thing that we want to do is tell the camera to follow our character. The easiest way to do it is to use Cinemachine. And we'll go into our package manager. Make sure you're on the Unity registry. Let's search for it. Yes, it's here. Click install. If you don't have it, first click import and then install. Wait a few seconds. Great. So now that we have Cinemachine installed, let's add a virtual camera. And let's tell it to follow the wizard wherever it goes. Let's see if it's working. Yeah, it seems to work just fine. Great. Now we want to just push it a little bit upwards. We'll go to body. In the transposer, we'll move the y-axis a little bit up. Let's have a look. Great. Now let's replace the camera from orthographic projection to perspective projection. You'll see that the camera now is much bigger. And if we'll hit play, you can see we capture a lot more of the scene. The scene now looks a little bit different. And also we're missing the background. That's because if we go back to our virtual camera, we'll see that the far off clip plane is on 50, while the z-axis value of our furthermost layer is on 61. So let's just change that to 65. If we hit play, we'll be able to see now this background. Now it's too small. Even though I made it much bigger, it's not big enough. So let's increase its size. And take it down. And the clouds too. Let's have a look. No. Okay, so all we have left to do is duplicate these parts. So we can take this layer and that layer, which is the ground and the trees, and duplicate them. Hit just Ctrl D. And let's move them here and duplicate them again and move them here. The mountains, which is, if I'm not mistaken, this layer, right? Yep. Let's duplicate them too. And again. And let's see how it looks. So let's add a sorting layer which will tell Unity which parts of the layer we want to bring forward and which we want to put in the back. So let's go here, add a sorting layer. We have one, so let's call it foreground. And let's add all the number 1 sprites, which is the ground, and the trees, which are number 2, to this layer. Yeah. Let's see. Yeah, much better. And we need to bring our player character here as well. Yeah. So now if we move around, we can see we're already getting the needed effect. Oh, our mountains are giving us a hard time too. So the mountains actually can be in the background in the default layer, but let's just sort them. So here it will be on -5. And the clouds will be on -4. And the mountains, well, they can just stay on 0. That should be enough. Yeah. So now Unity knows in what order to display the sprites, to render the sprites on our screen. Now we can see the mountains are a little bit high, and maybe the trees needs to be a little bit lower too. So let's take all the trees, which are layer number 2, here, 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 and just drop them a little bit. And the mountains, which is layer number 3, 3 and 3, drop them some more, and almost, let's drop them a little bit more. Okay, and as you can see, we have a nice parallax effect, but we can see the ground. So we'll have to bring the camera up and probably some of the background down a little bit to change the perspective. Let's see. We can actually do it during the game. So the camera needs to be about 520, and the mountains, which is layer number 3, needs to go down to -125. So okay, let's pick this, drop it down, and the camera, let's bring it up, let's have a look. Yeah, looks great. So as you can see, we got a parallax effect without using any scripts. This is suited for games that you don't need to generate an endless background. So it's games, platformers, where you create the scenes in the editor beforehand. It's not suited for every game, but still, it's pretty cool. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial on how to create the parallax effect without any scripts. Next time we'll create the same exact effect only using script to help us generate an endless background. Join me next time and see you later. Bye.